Morning, folks. That is Higgins Armory. And this is the last time I'll ever be here. Because at the end of this year, Higgins Armory is going to be no more. They're breaking up the collection to other museums, and this is the last time it'll be all in one place at one time. So this is kind of a bittersweet day. So here we have the entrance. It's kind of cool. There's my lovely wife. So we're headed in.
I can't do that.
I okay. Yeah, I asked her, but I don't think she's in the headspace to give me the answer.
And here we have some display of some of their Asian collection, showing off some really nice examples of metalworking. And that's a really lovely suba. And then we have a very, very large folding knife. A real, honest to gosh, folding sword, essentially. Make all the anime fans out there jealous. A tooth extractor. Colony tool for pipe smokers, how handy. And we have our old school oxidylene torch. A really nice example of metalworking. I mean, that's just really incredible. We have a prototype experimental helmet from 1917. Interesting hand tool. You actually can see some of these similar designs to this in modern tools. It's a statue that is possibly emulating Hector. I'm not positive. Meteorite steel, which is awesome. Paperweight in the form of a stork. Then we have over here, we have an original fork. St. Florin, second half of the 15th century. We have a photo of a great hall, and here we have a swept hilt sword, circa 1610. Over here, we have a good example of a very heavy crossbow. And this is the crankin used for said heavy crossbow. And you can tell why there's a reason these things are not fast. They are very slow to load, but you are going to generate an incredible amount of energy with a prod that heavy. And here are the corals, bolts. I mean, essentially close to flightless with heavy, heavy points. And these are definitely armor-piercing style of points. Here we have a quiver. It's kind of interesting looking. I've never seen a quiver in that particular shape before. But according to the card, it's late 1400s or early 1500s. It's kind of interesting. That's just really well executed. And look, the nut, I think that nut is probably horn, but I'm not positive. To intrude upon your photo. Here we have Higgins' personal suit of armor. It's a really nice example of full plate. There you have the tilting bar for the helmet. You have the lance rest here built into the side. And a really beautiful example of a two-handed sword. That's some really nice work there on the foot armor. The V-cops, elbows, and just some beautifully executed.
Controversially modern on the outside, the interior featured corporate offices on the first two floors. Higgins Armory was exhibited on the third floor. in a great hall based on the castles that the family had visited in Europe. Higgins included touches such as medieval-style stained glass windows and smudged the stone.
Here we are in the children's area of the museum. So they have a display of a battle here, which is a really nice example of a pike square. And they have things like
Castle version of You Sank My Battleship.
right, You Sank My Battleship. And then they have play areas that give an example of different construction types. There is a toy horse, a full-size replica of a charger, a nice mural, a hunting dog. Here you can get your picture taken with as a knight. Here we have an example of a hawk for falconry. And then for those so inclined, there is a large chess set if you're into that kind of thing. And then they have some hands-on material here so that kids can get an idea of what it's like to wear armor, to touch armor. Because of course, obviously, a lot of the demonstration pieces, the pieces on display, you're never going to be able to touch those things. And then we have examples of different weapons, like the poleaxe, the classic halberd, the Swiss Army knife with polearms, a broadsword, mace, this would be considered probably a light mace, a warhammer, which is the scale of actual such weapons, and you notice there's a plate here because obviously this can move. An idea. Then we have the classic longsword, which is a misnomer if you ask me. Then we have a set of armor here that a kid can step into and allow them to look themselves in the mirror. And then helmets that kids can try on. The conical helm, the great helm, the Soleil, the Maximilian helmet, and the Morion from 1575, which is pretty much, you know, the Conquistadors era, where they really started to phasing out the use of helmets completely until they were once again adopted during World War I. They started wearing steel helmets again. Quite a few of the displays here are new to me. I actually haven't seen some of these because I haven't been here in 3 years. So some of this stuff is I haven't actually seen myself. But there's a quote here that I happen to really like. Machines cannot put art into an object. Only hands and hearts can. John Woodman Higgins. Here we have a musket for a child, and to give you an idea how big this is. There's my hand. That's not a very large musket. From the 1870s. I never got cool toys like this when I was that size. Lovely selection. Halberds. Sorry about the glare. And then we have some bill hooks. A small suit of armor, obviously well suited to, pardon the pun, to jousting, because you have the large keel in the front to help divert jousting points away from the body of the wearer. This is a very small suit. I mean, it's like a person that's about 5'2". Here we have bills and runcones. The one here on the left has a more elaborate shaft. The ones here on the right have a slightly more plain design. I happen to like the cross sections like this. I think it helps to orient the object in your hand. It's less likely to turn it in the way you don't want. A particularly straight shaft like that, I think, turns in the hand too easily. And then we have some military forks. And then this spear here has cross pieces, one going forward and one going back. And we have some examples of
very nice decoration etching on that as well.
horse armor. I like these glaives, beautiful. One of my favorite polearms. Very fancy decoration on this one. And again, this shaft here in the middle has a great deal of texturing to it, affording a subtle and secure grip. And then we have ceremonial armor, later period, 1570 to 90. That beautiful crest. And the armor, and the person wearing it would have been wearing colors this brightly. Yeah, this is definitely something you want to show off. And so that's what you do. And then over here.
The patterns.
Mm-hmm. Full cards. And then that one has some wonderful cutouts in it. And they're echoed that piece near the top. Kind of almost a fractal design here, which is kind of interesting. And again, some fancy tassels on these. Memory. Then we have some half armor, useful in foot combat. And again, a keel on the front to help divert weapons away from the torso of the wearer. It's a really nice plume on that helm for display and show off that you were wealthy. And aren't these just gorgeous? Look at that. With a fine nature of those. And the scalloping on this is just incredible. Never been able to capture anything like that myself in my sketches. Never quite pulled it off. And again, some ceremonial work. And I happen to like this shaft again because it's got a rectangular cross section as opposed to a round. And here we have full jousting armor, as you can see from this huge plate here for diverting an incoming point. I mean, look how far that sticks out from the body. Look at this craftsmanship on this. I'm gonna come around here in the back and get you a shot of that. Look at that. It's just astounding. The work that went into those articulations. Look at those gloves, those gauntlets. Just beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous. This is around 1600. And you just barely see it on that helm. But that meant you also were less likely to get yourself blinded by an incoming lance and breaking wood splinters and such. And here we have some more jousting armor. This is slightly later in the same period than the last one. In the same century, but a little later. You can see the holes in the armor. That would be where you'd mount a rest, and you'd have multiple holes so you could choose where the wearer would wanted the lance to be sitting. And speaking of lances, here is an actual lance going up to its steel tip. And over here we have another, although I'm not making anybody seasick. This one has some nice fluting in the, and it's very long, all the way up to there. It's a beautiful example. It really is. And here we have some more polearms. And a classic poleaxe. And that thing's probably about 6 feet long. It's got a textured back, so blunt surface for biting into the armor. And then of course it's got side spike, main spike, and then the blade itself. We have a couple of examples of offhand weapons here. We have a rondel dagger, and this would be also be a main weapon, your classic mace. Over here we have 16th century halberd, slightly smaller head than you find on some, and then you have the upper portion of a pike. This is not the full length. A pike is 16 feet long. And then over here we have a painting. I'll get another shot of this in a minute. A painting of an actual tournament. Behind me, in a dynamic pose, we have two combatants, both using two-handed or hand-and-a-half swords. It's wearing a brilliant blue skirt and having a lovely plume. Look at the fluting on the back of that armor. That's just beautiful. And you have, look at the work on that. And again, the fluting is not just decorative, but it helps to strengthen the material as well. And then we have a steel back skirt on this particular piece. I happen to really like the rounded nature of that helm. I think it's quite attractive. And here we have some armor for a 19th century carabiner. So the armor is useful, but also a great deal of it is ceremonial at this stage. You're talking the 1860s, the era of the American Civil War. But still, having that on your torso meant that if you did take an incoming round, you would be much more likely to survive, or at least, suffer a wound as opposed to a fatality. We have some examples of armor. A bulletproof targ from the 17th century. And here we have the evolution of the gorget. The gorget was originally a functional piece of armor, and as time went on, the gorget got smaller and smaller until it just became a simple symbol of the order of being an officer or being an armored knight, because it evolved to something that was useless. It was just symbolism. And the gorgets are I think there are some gorgets still present in some forms of really high-end dress. Here we have miniature cuirass in the 16th century, 1885 to 1890. I have no idea if it's ever used or was simply used as a model. This is what I can do. I mean, it's simple and easy to carry around. And again, it has that forward keel, which adds a great deal of strength and helps to divert incoming blows. And we have some art of the era. We have a really nice back plate from 1548. Brow reinforcement, which was quite attractive. We have a helmet from the end of the 16th century, 1585. And this one has gilding on it, and some very attractive accents that were, purely ornamental. And that crest is useful and also helps to reinforce the armor a great deal. And then we have a picture of an armor polisher. And then we have some nice examples of high-end ornamental armors here. Here we have a nice shot. I can actually get you a slight shot of the inside. There's a little bit there. Shadowing's a little bit of a problem. So you can see the details on that. I mean, that's got some really nice details there on the side of the greave and the full armor. And here we have a selection in this case of different helm types. And then we have examples of forearm armor, shoulder pieces with a functional gorget, and then we have the interior here of a chest piece. And you can see this is a lower end piece of armor, and also it could have been recovered. It just shows showing a bit of wear. And you have some of the tools of the trade for making armor, different types of anvils and surfaces that you would need for forming the different types of pieces. For example, you'd want an anvil like that if you're going to be forming a tight curve on an arm or leg piece, while you'd be able to use a larger, flatter anvil like this for the larger pieces. And you have a set of calipers for measuring. And we have some, it feels like a practice piece to me. There's a helm with a tilting lift. And we have a very ornate, high-end piece of armor. That to me strikes me as very ceremonial. I have no idea if that was ever actually used in combat, but it is lovely. But it does have the mounting points for lance rest, so maybe it was. And then we have some more artwork here. We'll get that frame square for you. Sorry about that. And then an example of this particular style from the period, which is kind of nice. Here we have a closed helm from around 1535, 1540. Unfortunately, the collection is not complete at the moment. They actually are missing some pieces, because again, it's being broken up. So some of the pieces are already gone. In fact, I already found some mounts on the wall that were empty. So that's kind of a bummer. I don't know if all the pieces that I have taken and shot in the past will be present. I do have some stills of the last trip I made. And if I ever get myself motivated, I'm going to get those and put them together into a slideshow. And here we have a small halberd, German, 17th century. And it has a really nice shaft, plenty of grips. And because it's not perfectly round, it's going to be easier to keep yourself oriented in the direction you want to. Nice edge on shot there. And over here we have another folding weapon. This is a folding sputum, which is really quite fascinating. Let me give you a shot here from the end so you have a real idea of what this looks like. I mean, that's just a tremendously cool item, a folding sputum. I mean, that's great. It just makes me think of just something right straight out of anime. Now this here is a shield that I happen to have a great affection for. This is a shield with a cannon built into it. This is one of the few examples I have seen of this particular style. And then we go walk around the pole and I'll get you a shot from the back. And here we are behind the shield. You can get a shot. It's got some glare here and I apologize. The lighting is very tough in here. There's a lot of flat surfaces you're fighting against. But you get an idea of what the shield looks like from the rear, and you can actually see the mechanism there, and you can actually look very carefully. See if I can get it in there. You can actually see those little holes? You can see how you aim this. Though I can't imagine you'd be doing a whole lot of aiming. It'd be more like waiting till someone gets fairly close and you just discharge it at them as a way of warding off an attack. Alright, here we have a knight at the joust. So we have full armor for jousting. And you'll be doing the horse itself has a fairly small headpiece. But then again, you're not aiming at the horse, you're aiming at the guy on the horse. Use of the stirrups, revolutionizing horsemanship. And then over here, you have another example of his opponent. And again, this particular piece of armor has a very large plate for diverting the incoming point. And we have what are lovely pantaloons style. And here you can see a helm designed to keep the head in place. So we have reinforcement here, so that if he takes a point in the head, that is going to help prevent his neck from snapping back and potentially having a severe injury. And here you have actual screws holding the elbow piece in place. I don't know if we can see the rest. Yes, you can. You can see the rest just right inside there. You just barely see the rest. But a little bit. There we go. Sorry, there's a lot of bright lights in here. There you go. And then we have the headpiece here on the horse. There's lots of weapons in my house, but none of them are period.
We'll send a truck.
And that's just really wonderful. And here we have a portrait of, if I can get the lighting correct. Here we go, the portrait of John Higgins and his suit of armor. And we have a saber style halberd, which is very cool. But has really nice reinforcement here on the shaft, coming all the way down, almost fully half of the shaft is that reinforcement, which is nice. Here we have a piece of artwork of the era. Well, I'm apologizing for the lighting here. It's very bright. And we have some good example of mail, very fine mail. This is modern mail for a fishmonger, so armor does live. And this is a full mail sleeve. They're predicting from somewhere between the 1500 and 1600. You get a nice example of how the mail is constructed. So here we have a knight from 1290. So classic kite shield. He's using the war saddle, the war cack, with the full support. We're looking at mail, a full closed helm, and a lance, which he carries in a sheath, and of course the knight's spurs, which designated him as the equestrian class. So here we have a piece somewhere in the late 1400s, early 1500s, full plate with pointy foot coverage, and realize that the foot coverage was very much a part of the fashion of the day. That varied a great deal. It's a really nice rest on this armor. That's a really good example of a lance rest. And you have the helm here. Nice flare in the back, some nice articulation there. And this has an excellent example of a warhammer. And that, folks, is what a warhammer actually looks like. It is not Mjolnir as depicted in the Thor movies or the comic books. That is what a warhammer looks like. And this is a two-handed warhammer. And you are going to generate just immense amounts of impact energy. And it's got points on the tip, 4 points on the tip to again keep it from sliding off your opponent. A small spike, and then a large spike in the back for penetrating armor. And if you penetrate the armor, folks, you dent the armor. Remember, the guy in it doesn't have anything he can do other than be in a lot of pain, because you're not going to get that off without a smith. Here we have full Maximilian armor from 1510 to 1520, and I'm not gonna say that this particular knight is attempting to compensate for anything potential, but you know, maybe. And again, that's a really good example of a lance rest. And some excellent fluting. Look at the braiding on that. That's purely ornamental, folks. I mean, the fluting does help reinforce it, but most of the other work on this is purely an example of the art of the armorer. This is the Lamborghini of the era. This is the height of craftsmanship. You simply cannot get. I mean, this has a mustache on the helm. You can't get any better than this when it comes to the skill that went into armor. This is just astounding. And like I said, I'm not going to say he's compensating, but you know. Here we have some example of pikes. These are probably about 12 feet tall. And that one on the left there has a particularly narrow point. I'd be almost afraid to have that breaking. And these are slightly octagonal shafts. And then over here, we have halberds. The one on the left having a particularly long center spike. And then over here, we have armor from 1590s. And this has a really low jousting rest. And this one, that's interesting, and it's very ornate. I mean, that's a jousting rest that has a lot of detail built into it. This is showing quite a bit of pitting, but it's also got a lot of engraving work. And of course, the more engraving work you have, the more surface area you have, and the more surface area you have, the more chance you have of getting some kind of rust and such on it. But that's really well executed. And that's art, folks. That isn't just armor. That's art. Just beautiful. And he's apparently not feeling that he has to compensate anyway. Northern German, last half of the 16th century, so 1550 to 1600. Nice crest on that helm. And yes, I am recording this both to share with my friends here on YouTube and for me to remember this, because I'm never going to see this collection together again. So I want to make sure I get this. That's a nice crest on that one too, to divert incoming blows, to keep them from penetrating the armor. 3/4 field plate from the latter half of the 16th century, very ornately engraved. I mean, the articulation is engraved. Everything on this particular piece is engraved. I mean, it's just beautiful. Leaf patterns, and that spiral right there is quite attractive. Echoed again in the back. It has kind of a Celtic vibe going on there. And here we have the back piece. And I mean, this is a part of the armor that you're never normally going to see, and yet the artist, this artist went to such effort to make this look good. Sorry for the case beams in the way, corners. And we even have portraits right there at the center of that spiral. And look at that elbow. That's just a thing of beauty. And here we have a chest piece from the last decade of the 16th century with proof marks on it to show that it could in fact withstand rounds. We have no idea if this has actually ever been used in battle, but that's pretty cool to know that it would in fact deflect incoming rounds. And speaking of incoming rounds, here we have a wheel lock carbine. And the wheel lock was the transitional stage between the matchlock and the flintlock. And there we have a classic broadsword. Here we have a knight with a very interesting helm. It's an interesting helm design, it really is. And behind him is a halberd, using a single handed sword, and with some interesting leggings on this particular piece. Here we have half armor using a pike. Some nice articulation there on the skirt. Here we have a nice 3/4 armor with some very large articulated pieces and nice riveting work. And the helmet is quite attractive, very attractive with that Middle Eastern style to it. Very nice. And then we have here a full-blown match lock musket, about 1600. This is a very large piece. And then we have the powder horn. And we gotta zoom in on that. Skal will probably appreciate that. It's quite attractive. And here we have a cabinet with a number of different displays. For example, a purely ornamental gorget, an ornamental style halberd, purely for show. We have some helms. Here we have a back piece that was actually found at a battle site, as well as a spear point that was found at a battle site. Here we have a small sword at the height of ornamental weaponry. The blade is etched. The hilt and the guard are inlaid with cartouches. I mean, this is just beautiful. It's just a wonderful example of craftsmanship at its best. And now we have some older pieces. These are actual Bronze Age pieces. I'll get you a back shot here. I'll get to the whole display here, then I'll do a little close-up. And here we go, the blade. Obviously a large dagger, and that's how you'd mount it. And we have a small sword. The tip is missing on this particular one. It's here. And we have this one, which is kind of a classic leaf blade pattern. Just the tip missing. Otherwise, it's in relatively decent condition. And this one is in excellent condition. Though it's a straight design, I mean, everything in this sword is in excellent condition. We have a sword blade and a brooch. We have a display here of different light swords. I'll give you a nice shot of the different hilts on these. And that one right there, with a ceramic grip, painted. And these all have diamond cross sections designed mostly for thrusting, not really designed for slashing at all. Very much dueling weapons as opposed to field weapons. Alright, here we have a cabinet with some pieces in here which are ceremonial and fantastical in nature. I mean, look at the hilt on that. It's got a skull on it, and then it's got this wonderfully wavy blade, skull and crossbones on this. But this piece here just made me laugh. I mean, look at the grip on that. Wasn't that marvelous? And then we have a large execution style sword, no tip whatsoever, all blade, just made for decapitation. And over here we have some classic sabers in really fine condition. And this is actually a sword that was made in the United States. I've had the pleasure of holding a weapon like this. I actually knew someone who owned one, and it's really marvelous to hold. It was quite interesting. His father was the curator of a museum and had over the years acquired quite a few excellent pieces in his personal collection, and that was one of them. Now there is a weapon of nightmares. This just says that it's a boarding sword. We have classic cutlass on that side. And then we have a triangular shape, a diamond-shaped blade for thrusting. We have another cutlass, and then a more ornate saber style.
So here we have this, especially during the medieval period. So this is purely a ceremonial thing.
So it's kind of like a flag. So someone would carry this around in front of them. They might have like some sort of holder so they don't have to hold it up with their arms all day. They would walk around in front of the duke, the king, or the queen, and let
This one,
everybody know that someone in power.
you can actually lift.
So basically a sword that shows up.
And guess what, folks? It doesn't weigh 6 pounds.
Yep, and there's some writing on it.
And we have some really fine examples of broadswords. And look at those. Aren't they just
and we got
beautiful?
this really, really rusty one right there. And that is from the 1400s. And this is, of course, you have one hand on it and hold on to your wrench with the other, but if you're on your feet, you can probably get a hand and a half on it and get more power. Now this one in the middle is another really rustic one. But this is a little bit different. This is a Viking sword. So this is from about 900. And these swords were very, very exquisitely made. So these things, the difference between Viking swords.
Here we have some examples
And this one in
of the
middle is
Viking
nice,
era.
and that's what a typical knife sword will look like when it's not all rusted. And then these two on the
And here we have a man catcher,
we talked
which
about this
is
guy.
very uncommon, along with a nice little dagger.
This guy's job is to run at them and try to chop them off.
And over here we have a partisan, which is a wonderful design. It has some nice frill work and just a lovely shaft covered in studs for your grip. And we have a nice example of an axe up there. And over here we have the classic flail, ball and chain. And again, another example of a halberd. Over here we have an example of a Viking with the head of a pole axe. No, the shaft itself is missing, it would have rotted away. We have an example of what their sword length would have looked like. And we have an example of the actual spearhead. So these are actual artifacts. Then over here we have a video, which is probably not going to show up all that well because it's on video and vaping of the screen, but examples of how combat may have worked. Reenactment.
So we've been talking about
We have a purely ceremonial sword. Absolutely ceremonial. This is
those aren't for battle, and those are for
gigantic. Purely for showing off.
ceremonial purposes.
And then we have some examples of real functional
They
swords.
really don't do anything.
Viking swords in particular.
And that one on the left is actually a spring-loaded extended sword. So if you press the button, the
Then
blade
we
would
have-
actually shoot out farther, and it would probably be as long as that white outline is. So pretty cool, but with that spring in it, it might break easily if you're hitting people. So not really useful.
Here we have a nice example of a two-handed sword with a very
And these ones over here, this box, this is all
Guard.
American swords. So these are mostly from
And
the
again,
Civil
this would be
War.
used very dynamically. You'd be putting your hand there
By
on
that
the
point,
percussor.
swords weren't used
You'd
by
be using
the
this
actual-
very
these
much
were for,
as a
like, the
pull-on
officers
as opposed to
to
like
show off their
purely
status,
as
how
a sword.
important they are.
This is definitely designed for
That's
chopping
right.
as
You're
well
always
as
prominent. That guy's got it
potential
in
for
the
thrusting.
picture right there.
I
You
particularly
wanna
like the
show
hilt
off
on that piece right there. I
you
think
are an
it's really
officer
quite
in
done.
this.
It's got some nice delicate engraving
And then
on
behind
it.
us, this
Here we have a Vogue. Another build. And a nice broad sword. And over here we have a really nice example of a morning star. What an actual period morning star looked like. A big, nasty, two-handed club. Which is quite deadly. It could be used as a short thrusting weapon or just to deliver a massive amounts of blows. And there we have some vlogception going on. Did you take my picture, dear? And we have another piece here. Partisan. Here I am on the balcony, looking down at the Great Hall. There's the polearm display I showed off. There's the painting of Mr. Higgins. To give you an idea, I'll get some other shots from up here. Here we have another example of Maximilian armor. These all three are from the end of the 16th century, around that mark. Let me get a little closer here. That's a really nice checkered pattern on that shoulder piece, and that is a very, very well done example of from behind embossing. That was all hammered from behind the armor to create that. That's just beautiful. Here we have a pair of wheel lock pistols. These would probably be, you know, part of the classic horse pistol style. We have a skirt segment from some brigandine armor. We have an example of an armor-piercing arrow. Here we have an example of a early stirrup, 800 to 1100. Here we have a winged spear, also could be referred to as a wolf spear because of the wings that would prevent animals from coming up the shaft. An example of an actual axe head found at an archaeological dig. And then we have a good example of a helm with mail, up close and personal. We have just some artistry here, some examples of skill. And then we have another helm. I like the holes in that one, they're quite interesting. And then we have a serving knife, but again, very ceremonial. We have a gauntlet, chest piece with a nice keel, horse armor, good example of a stirrup. Here we have a horseman's warhammer, so it's a little lighter than the two-handed one because you had to wield it with one hand. Then we have a really nice example of a geometric mace. That's beautiful, almost like a D20 in some ways. That's a beautiful design. I would love to own something like that. I would love to make something like that. I think I actually have the skill if I could get my hands on a machine shop. Lance point, lance guard. We have an example of a period sword. Obviously heavily pitted because it was discovered, buried at a battle site somewhere. We have a rondel style dagger. Here we have a knee guard, and then we have a sabaton. Here we have a chest piece, a nice simple but elegant pattern. Our elbow armor. That's a nice helm. Look at that, the way that rivet was turned into a flower shape, very nice. And then we have a shoulder piece. And up there we have a period picture. I don't know if you can see that. The layers here is horrible, but a period picture of a knight. And here we have an exploded diagram, if you will, of the different pieces of armor, and all of them labeled with their names. And that's really a nice example of etching and helm. And here I am at the left wing balcony. I'll give you an example of what's up from the view from up here. And the hall has flags all the way down of different countries and military branches in the United States. The U.S. flag's down there somewhere. There's the British flag. And again, you can see some of the polearms from up here that I just showed you a view downstairs. Here we have one of the more unusual helms here, which is a Japanese helm designed in the shape of a conch shell. That's just fabulous. And then here we have the classic katana and wakizashi, and an example of Japanese armor with a demon face mask. Can I get you in there? I'm hoping I can get you in there without the glare. The glare is horrible here. Lighting does not help. And then we have an example of subas. And we have some examples of other swords, weapons, and armor and shields from Asia. Type of thing that you'd see on a Saracen. These are just fabulous. Look at those swords. Look at that. If you didn't see these for real, know that they were actually exist, you'd think that they came out of an anime. And here you have a gauntlet sword that's just purely for design, for for thrusting, and it's really not going to be all that effective swinging. You can't bend your wrist, but it's going to afford a lot of protection. We have a good example of mail, heavy mail. It's fully riveted. And you have some light mail with plates for the legs, which is very well executed. I'm going to get a shot of this armor from the back so you can see it. And that is just astounding. I can see the top of my head. Sorry about that. Just astounding. I can actually get you a shot of this armor from the rear that I showed you a moment ago. And the mail on the headpiece is much finer than the mail here on the body. Really beautifully done. It almost flows like fabric. And here we have an example of a Japanese musket. Yes, the Japanese did use firearms, believe it or not. Really beautifully executed. Look at the artistry that went into that. Just a work of art. Nice sight on it as well. And here we have different styles of arrowheads. And that one in the center would be known as a frog crotch arrow. I like that one right there. That's just unbelievably nasty. And a nice armor piercing design. And here we have an example of bronze axe heads. Now what I find fascinating about these bronze axe heads, if you look at that bronze axe head right there, I've seen an example of stone axe heads that are almost exactly the same shape as this. So it makes you wonder that if they were producing axe heads from a design from an earlier era before they had really begun to realize that they could take and use bronze in so many different ways. That the echoes of the past were still quite present, even though they were entering a new technical era. Here we have bronze surgical tools, which is fascinating in and of themselves, though slightly horrifying. These are called strigils. I'm not 100% sure what they do, I'll be honest with you. We have a bronze fish hook. We have a stylus from, this is no later than 476 current era. We have an Egyptian knife, and we have a dagger and shield. I'll get you a slightly wider shot on that one. Coming over here, give you a view from this angle. And here we have a shield boss in bronze, and this is probably one of the finest examples of a bronze leaf blade sword I have ever seen. That is astounding. Then we have some helms over here, which I'm going to give the back sections of first, because I'm behind the cabin at the moment. And look at this. This is, to me, and it's probably going to sound a little strange, but for me, this is the quintessential piece of Higgins. This is a 1st century bronze helm. That's just astounding. I think that breaks my heart. It's not going to stay here. Now we have the helms in the front, classic.
Jerry Cheevers was the goaltender during the and then he went to the workshop. This fellow's doing something.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Sure. And that's where I'm going. Go this way.
Then we have another shield boss.
I'm not going this way. There isn't anything. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Then we have another.
I hadn't been over there, so I didn't know. Yeah.
Another leaf blade bronze sword. Here we have a display of ornaments. So you have bracelets, a buckle, torque, another torque in the background, a large pin, very ornamental, very thing you use to hold a cloak. That is an armlet. That's a fabulous armlet. That is just beautiful. And we have a fibula, which I have no idea what a fibula does. I'll be completely honest. And we have another arm ring. A shot of the fibula. I'll have to look at what fibula does when I get home. When I get another shot of that armlet. That armlet is just marvelous. And it's, to my mind, that would fit with some modern fashion even today. Just beautiful. And then over here, we have, I can't remember what this piece is. Give me a second. I've seen it before. Come around very slowly so I'm not making you seasick. Oh, okay. This, now I can see it. This is an axe, which this is how they mounted it on the shaft. Obviously the shaft would be longer than that. And the axe blade has holes in it, so the leather strips hold it in place. But that is an actual primitive axe. Over here, we have a cobra figure, which is quite lovely. A lantern. Oops, a lantern. Medusa head plaque, which is very interesting. Coins. I think I actually have a bronze coin at home. A fragment of a mirror. They did have mirrors. A figurine of Osiris, and just a spoon. A very simple item, but you know, you slip that into a wooden grip, then you have a functional spoon. You know, that's obviously a spoon. If a rich person, a poor person would have a wooden spoon. And here I am on the right wing of the balcony, showing off the horses here. And you can see a photographer down there who I was talking to a moment ago. The lighting in this section is not great, but I'm going to try. Here we have a yataghan. We have an Asian form of horse armor. We have an absolutely beautiful dagger. That is a gorgeous dagger. Here we have a bow, unstrung bow, and in the strung position it could be carried in that case. That's a bow case, so that would cover the first half and the upper half would stick out. But that is a Asian style bow. My friend Skull should appreciate that. And here we have examples of Indian weapons. We have guitars, beautiful examples of guitars. We have tiger claws. We have a lovely sword. Look at the proportions on that. Look at that grip. And look at this dagger. Just, that's a work of art. Probably said that a whole lot today, I apologize. That is just beautiful. We get a full shot on that one. And here we have some more weapons from Africa, and I think these are all African weapons here. We have a large sword. We have an axe. This is an absolute, look at that blade. Isn't that just beautiful? And then we have this one here. We have a ceremonial knife here, and a large knife or a short sword. And this is a throwing weapon. They are listing it as 1900, which is probably what it is, but it also reminds me a great deal of the classic hungamungas from Africa, which were even larger. They had a very similar kind of scale, a little bit bigger than the ceremonial knife, that were thrown horizontally and could create just grievous wounds. Well, folks, here I am at the end of my tour of Higgins, and one of the more attractive displays they've got. And I'm glad I came. This place is beautiful, and I'm glad I've documented everything I could today. And as I've said, I've got a slideshow I should put together for you folks. But again, it's very bittersweet today. This is the last time I'll ever be here. The last time this collection will ever be whole. And I'm kind of sad. But I'm very glad that Higgins has been part of my life for decades. I'm glad I've had the chance to visit here every time I have. And I'm sorry for everyone who didn't make it. And I hope that you can appreciate the collection through my video, as I have appreciated it every time I visit it. Thanks.